The crew noticed how Bruce had changed. He was gentler now, less driven by ego or ambition, more focused on connection and authenticity. His performances had a vulnerability that hadn't been there before, a willingness to show age and weariness alongside the power and passion. Buster's taught him how to be human, one longtime crew member observed. Not the boss, not the legend, just a guy who loves his dog and isn't afraid to show it. By 2022, Buster's health was declining noticeably. Arthritis made walking difficult. His hearing was almost completely gone. He slept more and more, ate less and less. The vet's visits became more frequent, the conversations more serious. Bruce knew what was coming. He'd been through this before with other pets, but never with one who had meant this much, who had saved his life in such literal ways. The prospect of losing Buster felt like losing a part of himself. The part that had learned how to survive the darkness, how to find purpose in simple things, how to love without reservation. He started preparing himself, talking to his therapist about anticipatory grief, about how to say goodbye, about how to carry forward the lessons Buster had taught him. But knowing it was coming didn't make it easier. Patty watched her husband with the dog and saw something beautiful and heartbreaking, how Bruce had poured so much of his capacity for love into this animal, how Buster had received it and reflected it back without judgment or condition. She understood that when Buster died, Bruce would grieve like he'd lost a family member, because that's exactly what he would be losing. In early 2023, Buster stopped eating entirely. The vet confirmed what Bruce already knew. It was time. They could extend things with feeding tubes and aggressive interventions, but that would be for Bruce's sake, not Buster's. The dog was ready to go. The question was whether Bruce was ready to let him. Bruce took a week off from everything. No work, no commitments, just time with Buster. They did all their favorite things one last time, the morning walk through the fields, Bruce carrying Buster when the dog got tired, the afternoon in the studio, though Buster slept through most of it, the evening on the porch watching the sunset. On the last night, Bruce sat on the floor with Buster's head in his lap, and he talked. Not about anything profound, just talked about their years together, about the ways Buster had saved him, about gratitude and love, and the unfairness of dogs, lives being so much shorter than humans. "You were supposed to outlive me," Bruce joked weakly. "That was the plan. I was supposed to go first." Buster's tail moved slightly, not the usual 2 thumps, just a weak flutter of acknowledgement. The next morning, the mobile vet came to the house. Bruce had decided Buster would leave this world in the place he'd felt safest, surrounded by familiar smells and sounds and the presence of the people who loved him. They did it in Bruce's studio, on the floor under the mixing board where Buster had spent countless hours. Patty was there and their kids, and even Stephen Van Zandt, who'd started this whole thing 18 years ago with his suggestion to get a dog. Bruce held Buster as the injection was administered, held him as the breathing slowed and then stopped, held him for a long time after, not ready to acknowledge that his friend, his savior, his companion through the darkness was gone. "Thank you," Bruce whispered into Buster's fur. "Thank you for everything. Thank you for saving my life. Thank you for staying when the spotlight faded, when I was just a depressed guy who could barely function. Thank you for seeing me, the real me, and loving that guy. Thank you, thank you, thank you." They buried Buster on the property, in a spot that caught the morning sun, where Bruce could see it from his studio window. The headstone was simple. Buster Springsteen, 2003-2023, best friend, lifesaver, good boy. The grief was immense and overwhelming. Bruce had known it would be, had prepared as much as anyone can prepare for loss. But nothing really prepares you for the absence where presence used to be. The house felt wrong without Buster. The routines felt hollow. The studio felt empty. For weeks, Bruce struggled. He'd reach down to pet a dog that wasn't there. He'd listen for the sound of Buster's tags jingling, a sound that had been the soundtrack of his daily life for 18 years. He'd wake up expecting to see Buster's face and find only emptiness. Work helped, as work always helped Bruce process difficult emotions. He started writing songs about Buster, about loss, about the debt we owe to those who save us in ways we can never fully repay. The songs were raw and honest in ways that surprised even him. No metaphor, no poetry, just direct emotional truth. One song, "The Dog Who Stayed," became a cathartic release. After the spotlight faded, after the crowds went home, after the music ended, after I was alone, you stayed, when I couldn't find a reason. When the darkness came to visit, melodisticili. When I lost all sense of season, you stayed. He played it for Patty and she cried, not sad tears, but tears of recognition. That's what he did for you, she said. He stayed when nothing else made sense. When you couldn't see a way forward, Buster stayed. Bruce nodded, unable to speak around the lump in his throat. Gradually, painfully, Bruce learned to live with Buster's absence. Not to get over it, he would never get over it, but to integrate the loss into his life, to carry it forward as part of his story rather than something that stopped his story cold. He talked about Buster in interviews, no longer hiding the depth of his bond with the dog or the way that bond had literally saved his life. The vulnerability surprised people who knew Bruce primarily through his tough guy rock and roll persona, but it resonated deeply with anyone who had ever loved a pet, ever been saved by an animal's uncomplicated devotion. "I'm not embarrassed to say that a dog saved my life," Bruce told Rolling Stone in a candid interview. "During my worst depression, when I couldn't find reasons to keep going, Buster gave me one. He needed me. That simple need to be fed, walked, cared for, gave me structure when I had none, purpose when I felt purposeless. He saved me, and I'll spend the rest of my life being grateful for that." The interview went viral, not for scandal, but for honesty. Thousands of people reached out to share their own stories of animals who had saved them, of pets who had been lifelines during dark times. Bruce read many of the messages, finding comfort in the shared experience, in knowing he wasn't alone in having been saved by something as simple and profound as a dog's love. In 2024, Bruce established the Buster Springsteen Foundation for Animal Rescue, focusing specifically on helping people struggling with depression and mental illness adopt and care for pets. The foundation covered adoption fees, provided veterinary care, offered support for training and supplies, removing all barriers for people who might benefit from an animal companion but couldn't afford one. "Buster was a rescue who rescued me right back," Bruce said at the foundation's launch. "I want to help other people have that same opportunity, to find that same connection. Sometimes what we need most isn't another prescription or another therapy session, though those things are important, but something alive that needs us, something warm that doesn't judge, something loyal that stays." The foundation thrived, helping thousands of people over the coming years. Bruce stayed involved personally, reading applications, meeting recipients, following up on success stories. It was his way of extending Buster's impact beyond their individual relationship, of turning his private grief into public good. As Bruce entered his late 70s, he found himself reflecting more and more on legacy, not the professional legacy of albums and concerts and accolades, but the personal legacy of relationships and impact and love given and received. Buster loomed large in these reflections. The dog had been present for some of Bruce's most important years, had been witness to his struggles and his growth, had loved him through all of it without asking for anything except to be near him. "When I think about what mattered most in my life," Bruce told Patty on their anniversary, "it's not the Grammys or the sold-out shows or the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's this us, our kids, the people we've loved. And Buster, definitely Buster. That dog taught me more about unconditional love than almost any human ever did." Patty squeezed his hand.
He was special.
"You were special together. After the spotlight faded," Bruce continued, "after the crowds stopped mattering, after I couldn't hide behind the boss persona anymore, that's when Buster mattered most. When it was just me, flawed and depressed and scared, and he stayed anyway. That's the kind of love most of us spend our whole lives looking for." In his final years, and Bruce had no illusions that he had many left, he often visited Buster's grave. He'd sit there with his guitar sometimes, playing new songs, playing old songs, talking to the memory of a scruffy rescue dog who had rescued him right back. "You were the best of us," Bruce would say to the headstone. "Pure in a way humans never are, loyal in a way we struggle to be, present in a way we forget to be. You were everything good about the world in 80 pounds of fur and slobber." And then he'd play, not for an audience of thousands, not for critics or fans or legacy, but for Buster, for the dog who had stayed with Bruce Springsteen after the spotlight faded, who had seen him at his lowest and loved him anyway, who had saved his life in the most literal and important way possible. The music would drift across the New Jersey farmland, carrying with it gratitude and grief and love, so much love for a dog who had been more than a pet, more than a companion, who had been a lifeline when Bruce needed one most. After the spotlight faded, this dog had stayed, and in staying had taught Bruce Springsteen what really mattered, not the roar of crowds or the validation of strangers, but the quiet devotion of a being who loved you for who you were, not what you achieved, who stayed not because you were famous or talented or successful, but simply because you were you. That was Buster's gift. That was his legacy. And Bruce would carry it forward, in his music, in his foundation, in how he lived whatever time remained, honoring the dog who stayed, the friend who saved him, the teacher who showed him what love really means.